Assassination of John F. Kennedy is probably the granddaddy of all conspiracy theories. It's been over 50 years since that fateful day in Dallas, Texas, and countless people are still left unsatisfied at the findings of that case. However, I think there is one main true culprit in all of this where everything can be traced back to, and that is the mob, aka the mafia. Now, to begin, the Kennedy family had some ties already to the mob, beginning with JFK's father, Joseph. Joseph was described as a shady businessman, obviously very wealthy, as that helped his family build their name in politics, but it has been said that he built some of this wealth up by bootlegging during the Prohibition era, and during this time he built up connections with the mob and in cities such as Chicago. This helped greatly during the 1960 election that was very hotly contested, very close, so every vote counted. JFK got some help from labor unions, a lot of which were run by the mob, and of course mob power, to end up winning the election. And he did so by getting the votes in cities such as Chicago. Now, one of the main events in JFK's short tenure as president was the Bay of Pigs invasion on Cuba, in which they attempted to overthrow Fidel Castro. The CIA actually recruited the mob to help out because they had a stake in Cuba as well. The mob was attempting to build up a tourist destination that rivaled Las Vegas with casinos and resorts and all, so they had a lot of money invested. Of course, the invasion failed, and they lost out on a lot of potential money. And of course, it angered them. This, coupled with JFK's brother Robert cracking down on organized crime, made them feel like retribution was necessary, as JFK was not holding up his end of the deal after they helped him win the election, and he wasn't keeping his brother in check. Now, JFK was obviously assassinated on November 22nd, 1962, but it was just 2 days later that the main suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, was shot and killed by a man in the crowd named Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby was actually ran a nightclub in Dallas that was owned by the mob boss in Dallas, Joseph Civello. So he was heavily involved with the mob, and it is no coincidence that they ended up whacking Lee Harvey Oswald before he could say anything to the feds. However, this was originally glossed over by the Warren Commission that conducted an investigation on the assassination. They originally said that Oswald was the lone perpetrator in all of this, but in 1977, a tip actually came out that put Ruby at the scene of the crime. Previously, he was 5 blocks away, but an assailant said that he was at the scene of the crime, and he was described as saying, "Get ready to watch the fireworks." And after the assassination, he ended up entering a news station. So, the anonymous tip is right. That is no coincidence. In David Schreim's book, Contract to America, in which he talks about the mob's involvement in the assassination of JFK, he names 3 main perpetrators that organized this conspiracy, and Carlos Marcello, a mob boss in New Orleans, Santa Traficante, who ran Florida, and Jimmy Hoffa, who was the president of the Teamsters Union. It has been said that in the months leading up to the assassination, everyone in the mob is coordinated. So Jack Ruby looking at phone records, Jack Ruby was actually been described as calling New Orleans, where Carlos Marcello was, and it increased by more than 25-fold in those months leading up. So obviously something had to have been going on. Robert Blakey, who was the chief counsel of the House Select Committee on Assassination, says that Carlos Marcello was likely involved, and the mob is a likely culprit, as they had the means and opportunity to carry such an event. It has also been said that Ruby was in deep debt to the mob, and he could only repay it by whacking Lee Harvey Oswald. Another note that was glossed over is that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually from New Orleans, where Carlos Marcello was. Lee Harvey Oswald actually had a connection to the mob, as his uncle was well known as a bookie who worked under Carlos Marcello in New Orleans. So he had a connection to the mob as well. In addition, Jack Ruby also spoke of being in danger in the weeks leading up to the assassination, and he even attempted a confession in prison. Adding fuel to the fire, after being just released last year, The Irishman by Martin Scorsese heavily implies that the mob is behind the assassination of JFK. Joe Pesci's character in the story is even quoted as saying that what makes you think that they can't get to a president of a labor union if they whacked the president. However, one part of the book that the movie was based on was omitted. In Charles Brandt's I Heard You Paint Houses, Frank Sheeran actually admitted to delivering 3 rifles on the day of the assassination to Dallas. And in the History Channel program, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, a mob member named Christian David was interviewed in prison as stating that he, along with 2 other people, were gunmen. And the rifles that Sheeran actually delivered to Dallas were the same exact weapons used in the crime. So put that all together, what does it seem like? Maybe Lee Harvey Oswald was one of the gunmen. 55,000 documents have been released to this day, so what I've just talked about is just a smidget of the evidence that connects the mob to this. But the last batch of documents related to the assassination is set to be released on October 26, 2021. So perhaps on that day, we will finally get some closure on the assassination of JFK. Thank you.